Hey, how's it going? This is Vincent, and I'm doing something a little special for the New Year's Eve by creating this vlog. I figure I'd talk about a couple things to kind of usher us into the new year of 2013, and hopefully end this year with some enlightening information, or in this case, opinionated thoughts on some of the things that came out recently. As you know, for some people who probably will check this on Facebook and such, I have posted up reviews on two films that I saw recently, Django Unchained and Les Miserables. And I pretty much said everything that needed to be said, but I could elaborate a little bit more on those films. As for pretty much the other film I wanted to really talk about, I don't know if I'll have time for that, so probably consider that one to be the next vlog. In this case, it'll be the Dark Knight Rises. Instead of actually just having to do the written review and that's it, I figured I'd also do a vlog to actually express personally some of the satisfaction I got from watching that film, but also some of the issues I had with it personally. And there were a couple of problems with that film that I felt needs to be addressed personally, more so than through the review I'm pretty much writing at this moment. So two films I saw recently. The first one being Django Unchained, directed by Quentin Tarantino, and of course has a pretty stellar cast of actors that I've seen in other work, from Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Kerry Washington. So, yeah, and essentially it's a revenge plot. Basically, a freed slave is picked up by the dentist, played by Christoph Waltz, and they go around being bounty hunters, and he teaches them the ways of being a gunslinger. And during their travels and his training, he comes across the manifest that says that his wife, pretty much, played by Kerry Washington, was sold by a plantation owner named Candy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And what starts out as a simple adventure becomes a tale of debauchery, racism, and treachery at its finest. Everything you'd expect with a typical Western. Usually of the spaghetti era, the 60s and such. So, with that said, I think the best way to put it with this film is, and I've only touched upon it in the review very briefly, is that it's multi-genre. So, it touches upon a lot of the genres of storytelling that we've seen from different forms of media or in different fictions, but never all jumbled together at once. So, I guess the best way to describe this film is that it's pretty much a superhero origin story set within a spaghetti western / revisionist western film setting that happens to also be a blaxploitation film. And you pretty much get what I saw recently, which was Django Unchained. First off, the performances were pretty much stellar from everyone all around. I say the standouts for me were Christoph Waltz, who's just so deliciously charming as the dentist, especially when with his monologue scenes, which he tells with such ferocious confidence and charisma that is very rare to see with a lot of actors these days. So it was really nice to see an actor who could deliver monologues so well on film and be so fascinating and intriguing to watch without ever really giving a dull delivery for most of his lines, and his performances in general. So, with that said, it was great to see him again, especially playing a badass bounty hunter. So yeah, and Leonardo DiCaprio playing Candy, the plantation owner, the supposed villain of the film. Not really a villain that much, since he doesn't have much to do besides being a racist prick. And I gotta say, it's probably one of the most astonishingly campy, over the top performances I've seen in a while, and the mere fact that he plays it as almost like a cartoonish villain just adds more to the fun atmosphere of the film, despite some of the other issues I had with it. And I think you could tell it's very, very apparent that he's having a ball playing just a racist prick and just playing just a deliriously fucking evil, conniving bastard. And you could tell that it was a lot of fun for DiCaprio to actually play that role. So, yeah. The only problems I had with... And Kerry Washington's okay in the film. Before I get to probably the one that I was kind of mixed about. The only one I really felt kind of mixed-bagged about with the performances was Jamie Foxx. I felt that Jamie Foxx really kind of was half and half. At times, he was just the right... He had just the right amount of delivery and intimidation to really give the character that badass and essence. But I felt that he came off as uninteresting and bland. I probably don't blame him that much. I mostly blame the writing for not doing anything interesting with the character, because he kind of goes through the same processes and same journey that we'd expect from any anti-hero or hero that is pretty much finding his own identity, his own purpose. Essentially, almost every origin story you could pretty much imagine. And for that reason alone, I just really didn't find the lead character that intriguing at all. And like I said, Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is fantastic, and I really love the character he played. The problem is they don't utilize him as much as I want him to, as I wanted them to, or I was hoping they would. But turns out he was just kind of a throw. He had an interesting scene in the middle part, and then all of a sudden it was a throwaway scene at the end of it. It just didn't really add anything to the plot overall. The weirdest performance for me was Samuel L. Jackson, who plays a nice, loving black servant named Stevens. I'm sorry, his performance was probably the most ludicrously weird ones I've seen in a while. Because I'm used to seeing him being a rebellious badass motherfucker, and he's now playing some like bittered, kind of behind-the-scenes player, black guy that just basically does whatever he can to stay on Whitey's good side while trying to basically rule over his own kind like a fucking overlord. It was a weird performance, and I think the caricature he picked was something straight out of the 30s and 40s. I didn't know whether or not to laugh at it or just really be just confused with it, I think is the best way to put it. And I can't really talk about the film without mentioning the overuse of the N-word. I've heard like different reports, like it was said like 130 times. And I think the first argument is that was the time period. That's what people said over and over and over again. They're saying it over and over and over again to be accurate. And then they're saying it over and over again to the point where it just becomes obnoxious. And it wasn't the fact that I was offended with the word. I just felt like it was said so many times, it just became a bit annoying to listen to it. And it's like, is this all the director can write in terms of dialogue? Is just have every character in this film say, N-word this, N-word that, N-word this, N-word that. And this is like in the space of like 2-3 minutes. And it's not like, if it was like 30 seconds to a minute, it would be fucking ridiculous. But I think it's like every minute or two, somebody says the N-word. Mostly when the characters are, the main characters, the dentist and Django, are interacting with the other characters. Most of the times in those scenes, that's when they actually say the N-word like multiple times to the point where it just becomes just really tiring to hear it. And not because it's offensive, it just becomes boring to listen to the same dialogue like that over and over again. It just becomes repetitious. But that wasn't really my main issue. The main issue with the film is that it does feel like it was paced a bit poorly, mainly within its second act. The first half is intriguing enough because it's basically a hero's journey, so they go through different locales, hunting down different criminals, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of really cool, interesting character interaction scenes, especially with one that involved Don Johnson. I know, I can't believe he was in that fucking movie. Just seeing Django pretty much become more and more of a bona fide cowboy, in this case, a gunslinger. And when they finally get to the point in the film where he's trying to hunt down his wife, and he hunts her down at another plantation owned by Candy, I think that's when the film slows down. And there's some tonal whiplash that goes on a lot throughout those scenes. because you have one moment, very humorous, very witty conversations between the characters, and then the next minute you have essentially a full-blown just blood, guts, and just flat out just violent exchanges happening without a moment's notice. I think the best example of this is basically the characters are having their conversation, and the next thing you know, we have a full-blown like mutilation scene with a dog just basically tearing up some slave. After, of course, a very tense conversation between DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx's character. So it goes from one emotional tone to another. And for that, it has a lot of tonal whiplash that I think some people might not appreciate, or probably will just go against the film because of that reason alone. Plus, it feels like it was slowed down a lot by unnecessary scenes. I think they took some moments to actually try to build up this tension about the wife meeting up with Django again, and it went way longer than I wanted to. I think they really needed that really needed to be trimmed down a little bit. And I felt the middle act in general is where the film kind of became a showstopper and just basically was slowed to a crawl. So it just really took way too long to actually get out of the house and really see more action occurring and something more dramatic and important to the plot happening. With that said, the cinematography is gorgeous, and I think they really capture the West beautifully. The costume designs, they're kind of really good, actually. I like how lavishly gaudy and just extravagant some of them are. From some of the ridiculous ones like Jamie Foxx wears. I'm not going to spoil it, but basically he wears some really cool outfits that are really, really a blast to watch. And of course, they capture some of the Victorian styles and some of the traditional wares that you would expect within these types of movies, especially spaghetti westerns. And speaking of spaghetti westerns and genres, this film, if it's not the way the story is told, it's in its music that is very apparent that he was really paying tremendous homage to the spaghetti westerns when he was western films of yesterday's. I think basically Good, the Bad, the Ugly, some other Ennio Morricone scores actually worked on one of the original songs. Actually worked on a song for the film. And most of the songs are pretty much throwbacks, 60s and 70s, different musical compositional scores and certain pop songs that just literally pretty much were featured in certain Western films. Now, I'm kind of a novice, and I like Western films, but I am a bit of a novice, so I probably only seen the major ones, so I wouldn't know some of the offhand ones he kind of picked. And then he somehow, for some reason, he just uses some rap song. He uses a lot of hip-hop songs that I don't know. At times, it was okay, but at other times, it just felt kind of out of place. And I think that kind of fits into why the tone of it was just all over the place, because at one moment it wanted to be a Western, and then at another moment it was trying to also be a blaxploitation film with a good old traditional black hero taking it to the white man, and which is kind of the climax in a nutshell. With that said, I think that overall it really was an enjoyable multi-genre film that I think is more fun and more entertaining than Tarantino's previous outing, Inglourious Basterds. The problem with that film was quite simple. It was engaging as hell, and when the Bastards, and I would say Christoph Waltz was on screen, the Jew Hunter, it was fantastic stuff. I loved those scenes, and those scenes were fantastic, especially the bar scene. That's so fucking tense to watch. It's really just, it's kind of nerve-wracking just to see who's going to pull the trigger. And when the shooting starts, you're just blown away at just how much he holds tension and in a scene, and he does it so skillfully. And he does that really to great effect in this film, too. And I think you could tell he learned a lot of lessons from that film, especially with putting the title characters in the forefront, not in the background, kind of like what he did with his previous films, but then again, with his previous film. So, yeah. With that said, it feels clearly more focused and more linear than his previous film, which actually liked to jump around, and it was kind of traditional stuff that you expect from Tarantino, jumping around from different event to event. skipping through time spans and such. This film actually is straightforward, start from finish, pretty much Django's journey from being pretty much a slave, freed by a benefactor, to becoming pretty much what you'd expect from a blaxploitation hero. Big, strong, confident, and ready to kick the white man's ass all the way back to Kansas. Wait. Wow. That really was... I'm hoping that rhymed. Yeah, I guess I had a blast watching it. I really did enjoy it. I really felt that it was a very thoroughly entertaining homage to the genres it pays tributes to, from spaghetti westerns, revisionist, to, of course, the blaxploitation films of the 70s. And the performances are fantastic all around. My only issues really were the pacing needed to be better, simply put. I would talk about the other film, but I felt that I think everyone has said, pretty much have said their opinions. And quite frankly, I'll admit, I'm not the most, I would say, knowledgeable with musicals, despite the fact that I have watched a few musicals, and I have my favorites here and there, but I have to admit, I think I need to really, I gotta really sit down and really ponder upon what I saw about the next film that I was going to talk about, because I feel like I need to I think I need to have clearer thoughts and focus on what I liked about the film and what I didn't like, since I'm getting mixed opinions about the film I wanted to talk to, which is Les Miserables. But I figured let's keep it to Django Unchained, since not a lot of people are talking about it, so I figure, hey, I might as well give it a shot and just talk about it. So, with that said, I totally recommend checking it out with a full audience. Although, if you can't see it during the packed this week with a packed audience, I do suggest waiting for it to come on DVD or instant streaming and just watch it that way, so that you can just pause it, or you can even skip over some of the boring bits. Because there are some boring bits, and I do feel that it needed trimming. I think that was the major problem. It had some major pacing issues. And I say, if you're not a big fan of these types of genres of filmmaking, I don't think you're going to get why this film is very effective, or why this film is thoroughly entertaining to me, and probably quite a few others too. So keep that in mind if you have any thoughts about watching it, but you don't know if you're a fan of the spaghetti western genre, or even blaxploitation films in general, since it's very much an ode to those two genres of filmmaking and storytelling. So with that said, consider this kind of a bit of a gift to all you guys, so you could see me in the flesh and actually talk about something, even if it is kind of a bit clumsy. Bear with me, this is my first attempt. I have to get used to looking at the camera instead of having to look at a computer screen and actually type. So with that said, yeah, 2012 has been one hell of a year, and all I could say is Happy New Year's to everyone, and cheers.